What's going on, guys? It's getting cold outside. It is officially winter here in New England. So that means I'm going to be spending more time inside. And I thought it would be a great time to kick off this new comparison video series that I've been wanting to do for a while. What I want to do is to show you a comparison between a little bit higher budget rig and a much lower budget rig. How are they similar? How do they differ? And what can you do to that low budget rig to bring it more in line with the higher budget rig? For this comparison, I'll be using my Axial Yeti kit that I built, and I'll be comparing it to this Hobbyking Desert Fox. There's over $750 invested in this vehicle here. This vehicle here sells for $150. That's a big difference. How does it stack up? To start this off, I'll give you some background on each of these vehicles. That way you'll know what this vehicle has and what this one has. How do they compare? And the first change I'm going to make to these vehicles, which is what we're doing in this video here, is going to be to upgrade the tires. So let's get started. So first we have the Axial Yeti. This is a vehicle that I've had my eye on for quite a while. I really like my Bomber, and I thought this Yeti would make a great companion vehicle. It may not crawl as well as the Bomber, but it's more fun as a higher speed vehicle, and so that's where I kind of focused my attention. So for those of you who aren't real familiar with the architecture of a Yeti vehicle, this is kind of a hybrid vehicle. It's designed for that rock racing, high-speed trailing, bashing, crawling, jack-of-all-trades sort of application. If you take a look at it, what you'll find is that on the back it has a solid rear axle with a trailing arm 4-link suspension. This setup worked so well on the Yeti that Axial brought it right over onto the Bomber. I've had experience with it and I'm very happy with it. On the front of this vehicle, what you have is an independent front suspension, just like you would find on a typical basher. This will help improve handling, but it's not going to allow it to crawl as well. Not only do you not get the same amount of articulation, but you wind up with this big flat tub, so you don't have the same sort of ability to crawl over steeper obstacles. This vehicle has an open front differential, and it has a locked rear differential. And that combination is sort of a compromise between handling and crawling capability. If this had an open front and rear like most of your bashers do, it would handle a little bit better on high grip surfaces, but it wouldn't have the same sort of capabilities in low grip surfaces. This vehicle was built up from a stock Yeti kit, and I haven't made too many upgrades from that actual kit. I have made a few, and I'll show you what they are. First of all, you can see the paint. I'm pretty proud of the paint. I like how it came out. This is one area where obviously the kit differs tremendously from the RTR in that you get a clear body and it gives you the ability to kind of take it in any direction that you want. To maintain the same theme that I started with my Bomber, I wanted to incorporate a lot of the same look, and that's why I'm using more of that same vinyl sheet that I used on the Bomber and on the Gen 7. To complement that, this time I decided to do some paint work, primarily the candy orange that you see and a little bit of black. Overall, I'm real happy with how it came out. So one last thing to mention before we pull off the body is the tires. You can see that right now I still have the stock kit tires in here. I did go with Crawler Innovation Deuces Wild single stage foams in the front and the rear. Check out the link below or at the end of this video and you can see one of my running videos that I published a while back, and it might give you a good idea of how this vehicle works with these tires. The grip on these tires isn't too bad for an RTR. These are a somewhat firm tire, but they've got a really nice aggressive tread pattern. In the dirt, I was real happy with how they worked. On the trails, I think they work well. When you start getting into real steep stuff, start getting into rocks and so forth, then you really start to see their limitations. But overall, I think they're a decent tire. Even though I think they're a decent tire, I also think there's a lot of room for improvement, and that's where we're going to head next. Let's get the lid off and we'll take a look under the hood. So on the front end, this is still totally stock, except that I do have STRC steering knuckles and C-hubs. Other than that, everything up front is completely stock. On the back, I've got MFR trailing arms. I'm not really a big fan of the stock trailing arms. I managed to pretzel them on my bomber, and so I knew right away I wanted something different here. But I didn't want something really heavy. I wanted something nice and lightweight but durable. These MFR trailing arms are aluminum, and they use a large 6/32 stud that goes into the E-Revo end links. It should be a good strong combination. So far I haven't had any issues. So moving on to my electronics package, I'm using a Castle Mamba X speed control just like in my bomber. I really like this speed control. It's a good quality unit, and that auxiliary control really works well in a multi-purpose vehicle like this. I can dial in however much drag brake I want right from my remote, and if I turn it all the way down, it gives me a forward brake reverse function just like you would have on a normal basher. That really gives this vehicle the kind of versatility that I think it needs. For the motor, I chose a Hobbytar 3000 kV censored 550 can. This is an affordable motor at around $60, but I'm real happy with the performance. It's got great torque, and it's still got great low-speed startup because of that sensor. For the servo, I went with a Pro Modeler 470 just like on my bomber. At the $100 price point, I really can't think of a different servo that I would prefer, so I figured we might as well go with what works. Lastly, for the controller, I'm using the same radio link that I use for a lot of my other vehicles. I've got extra receivers and I plunked one into here. The only other thing I've done to this vehicle so far is to add an auxiliary power wire. Eventually I will have LEDs on the body, and so I planned ahead and made sure I had the wire right there. So that's enough of this one. Let's take a look at the Hobbyking Desert Fox. So now we have the Desert Fox. This is a really affordable vehicle from Hobbyking. This vehicle sells for just under $150 in the almost ready to run category. That means that you will need to add your own controller. For me, that's not a problem. For you, you can get the ready to run for a few bucks more, or you can repurpose another controller that you have laying around, or pick up one of the cheap FlySky controllers. Either way, I think this is a good vehicle for the money. Mine is the version 1, which came out a while ago, and I was able to pick it up on clearance for just over $100. The only difference between the version 1 and the version 2 is the motor and speed control. The motor and speed control that came in this one had a reputation for cogging really badly, and this one was no exception. I did replace the electronics because it cogged so badly. If you get the newer one, it comes with a Hobbywing motor and speed control, and from what I've seen, it cogs a lot less. One big difference between this vehicle and the Yeti is that this vehicle is a four-wheel independent suspension vehicle. The Yeti has the solid rear axle, whereas this one has the independent front suspension and rear suspension. And that's because this vehicle is based on a short course platform. As you can see, it's got short course tires too. Because this is a short course based platform, it should offer pretty good handling. And maybe it can give you guys some ideas on how to repurpose one of your old short course trucks. If you have a 4x4 Slash or a different four-wheel drive short course truck that's just collecting dust, get a cage for it and you can turn it into more of a trail truck type of a vehicle as well. So this vehicle here, other than my electronics, is completely stock at the moment. I've used it a little bit. It is fun to drive. However, it's not really that good as a trail truck right now. It's got open differentials, whereas the Yeti has a locked rear and an open front. It's also got this really big short course style tub, so it really doesn't get over obstacles as well as something like the Yeti would with the trailing arm rear suspension. And lastly, these tires are pretty terrible. They're okay on pavement, they're okay on hard dirt. When you get into looser dirt and trail conditions, they really don't hold up that well. So now let's take the lid off and we can take a look at my electronics. So like I said, when I bought this, it came with a 3000 kV brushless motor system that cogged really badly. So what I did was replace it with a different brushless motor system that cogs really badly. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do plan on having an upcoming video where I start to show you guys how to address cogging and how to improve it. And this is going to be the platform. So make sure you keep an eye open for that. This is a motor and speed control combo that I picked up inexpensively on eBay. The brand name is called Hobby Power, but it's exactly the same as the Racer Star and Ghoul RC stuff that's become somewhat common. I've used that Ghoul RC and Racer Star stuff before. I kind of knew what to expect. In this case, I went with a little bit lower kV motor. This is a 2650 kV motor, but as you can see, it's a longer 3660 sized can so that it'll have extra torque. My plan is to run this on 3S just like I do with the Yeti, and that's why I wanted a little bit lower kV motor. It'll help with the cogging and it'll give me a lot more power. For a controller, right now I'm actually using the same radio link controller that I'm using on the Yeti and on my Bomber. Like I said, I had a bunch of these receivers that I bought, so for now I threw it in here just to get things working. So now let's talk about the upgrade that I'll be doing today. What I want to do is give these a little bit more of a level playing field by upgrading the tires on both vehicles. And this also gives me an opportunity to compare a couple of very similar but different tires. These are the Pitbull Rockbeast XOR tires. These are the tires that I planned on putting this Yeti from day one. I really like that they have a big wide profile, much like you would use on a basher vehicle, with a very aggressive tread, just like you want on a basher vehicle. But this is a very soft, pliable tread like you would see on a crawler. I think this is going to be a really good combination for this vehicle. For this vehicle, in keeping with the budget theme, what I wanted to try out were actually the Rockbeast knockoffs. This is a brand called Injora. They're the ones that make the knockoff Super Swampers. They're the ones that make the knockoff Hyrax. And now they have these knockoff tires that model these Rockbeasts. Since this is a budget-based build, I thought this would be a good opportunity to try it. And right away you can see some big differences in these tires. Even though the overall height is about the same, you can see that these knockoffs are not nearly as wide as the originals. Now I know you can't reach through the camera and feel it, but in terms of the rubber compound, these Rockbeasts are very, very soft. These knockoffs are quite a bit firmer. They're not as soft. So I don't really expect the same kind of performance when you get into the rocks and those low-speed crawling type of situations. But for a basher, I think these might work out pretty well. They may even work better than the Rockbeasts. One of the concerns I have is that these Rockbeasts are so soft, I really think these are going to turn into pizza cutters at speeds that I really hope to be able to use the Yeti at. Now in terms of price, there's not really a huge difference in price. These are about $25 a pair, which I think is a pretty good price compared to a lot of the other crawler type tires that are out there. These here are cheaper. They're about $30 for the entire set of 4. One other thing that I ought to mention is that the Rockbeasts don't come with any tire foams. The knockoffs do come with a tire foam, but it's your typical soft foam, which might work okay in a crawler application, but they're not going to cut the mustard in a higher speed vehicle like we have here. Now, in terms of wheels, this is an area where I kind of went cheap on both vehicles. On this one here, this is a set of no-name wheels that I've had my eye on for a while. They're a beefy aluminum design, and I really like how they look. Over here, we have another no-name brand, but what's nice about these is that these are the styles that use the SLW type hubs. But unlike the Vanquish wheels, these are available in a wider width. Because these tires are so wide, I wanted a wider wheel. And these are about a 30mm wide wheel. That said, these wheels are even wider than these, and I have a suspicion that these would have actually worked better with these wide Rockbeast tires. The reason I'm not using these is that these have the hex molded right into the backside of the wheel, and so I don't have the same options for wheel offset that I have with these that use the SLW style hubs. You can see on the back here that I've got the deeper hub that I need to be able to keep my offset on the back of the Yeti where it belongs. So lastly, let's talk about wheel foams. I decided that just like with these stock tires, I wanted to use the Crawler Innovation Deuces Wild single stage foams. When I ordered these foams from Crawler Innovations, they actually threw in a pair of the new firmer foams, and I thought that would be a great opportunity to give them a try. So what I'm doing is running the standard 3003 single stage foams in the rears, but in the front, I'm running those new stiffer foams. That should help with handling even more because it'll help keep those front tires from folding over. Lastly, in these wide XOR Rockbeasts, in addition to those single stage foams, I'm also running some of the tuning discs that are also available from Crawler Innovations. These help fill up a little bit of that extra space that the foams themselves really can't fill. On the clone tires for this vehicle, it's kind of the same situation, except I'm using the 3003 Deuces Wild foams in all 4 tires. However, in the front two, I do have a tuning disc just to help make it a little bit firmer and take up the rest of that space. In the rears, you can see it's got a little bit more give because I don't have those tuning discs. It's going to follow somewhat of the same philosophy as what I went with here, in that the fronts will be a little bit stiffer, a little bit fuller than in the rears. That should help give me a good all-around sort of a capability. It should handle well with those stiffer fronts, but having more give in the rears should help in those low-speed crawling and trailing situations. So now we're ready to put the new wheels and tires onto the Desert Fox, but I did want to point out a couple things. Because this is a short course style truck, it's really not designed for 2.2-inch wheels and tires. So you may have some issues depending on what wheels you decide to choose. In my case, I had 2 different types of issues. The first was the easiest to address. I had some minor clearance issues right here on the rear and on the front, right on the steering knuckle right here. There was just a little bit of interference. Just knock it down with a Dremel until you have clearance and nothing hits, and then you're all set. The other issue I had was that these mounting studs just don't stick out quite enough to get enough thread engagement on the nuts. In order to remedy that, I had to get a little bit creative. On the front, I just had to take a 4mm hex and grind it down a little bit until I had enough thread engagement. On the rear, I had to go with a different wheel hex entirely. This is a low profile wheel hex from Arma, and once I ground it down just a little bit more, I was able to get it to work. Just something to be aware of. Like I said, this vehicle wasn't designed for 2.2s, so it took a little bit of massaging. If you go with a 2.2 bead lock, you'll probably have a similar issue. Let's get these on. So now we've got new wheels and tires on both of these. I think it's going to have a big impact on both vehicles, but especially on this Desert Fox. Those short course wheel and tires really were not a good wheel and tire. Plus, it really limited my ground clearance. These taller tires are going to give me more ground clearance in this vehicle. It should just make it quite a bit more capable. This vehicle is already pretty capable, but this is still a substantial improvement in wheel and tire compared to what it had. I think it can only get better. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I hope you're as excited about this new series as I am. I've been wanting to do this for quite a long time. Make sure you subscribe, click that notification button so that you'll know when my new videos are up. We're going to have a few more videos on this and you don't want to miss it. Thanks.